Welcome back to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meier. What has the recent Chinese spy balloon incident taught us about shoring up U.S. defenses? Was it a major breach or not? And how would the U.S. prepare against a devastating attack? We sat down with retired Air Force Brigadier General Robert Spalding for his take. General Spalding, thank you so much for joining us. Great to have you back on the show.
Thank you. Great to be back.
I want to zoom in on this Chinese spy balloon episode. So President Biden just recently came out and said it was not a major breach. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think in terms of the intelligence collection ability is the way that he was thinking about it. And certainly we can take certain actions because we know the balloon is there. But I think the piece that Washington, D.C. misses is the psychological and political narrative that goes along with allowing the balloon to completely traverse the entirety of the United States. And that's really the more important part to Beijing. They're trying to signal to the world that China is rising and America is weak. Look how weak they are. They can't even stop this balloon, this Chinese surveillance balloon, from going across the entire country. And I think this is the thing that we have to begin to think about when we're talking about Beijing, because it's not just about the collection capabilities of things. It's also about the optics and the message that they're trying to send to the world. It sends to Taiwan, it sends to the world that China believes that America is weak.
And it seems in terms of, say, communication, after the U.S. shot down the balloon, we called up China and the phone just kept ringing. It wasn't picked up. So some experts are now concerned about that because there's talks about a new Cold War. And during the previous Cold War with the Soviet Union, the communication lines were open. And there's concern that without the communication lines open here with China, there could be space for misunderstanding and potential escalation. What's your take on all of that?
Well, again, we look at China in kind of the same vein that we do a Soviet Union or Russia, and they're fundamentally different. And so, in many ways, our continuous need to call them, to reassure them, for them, they're seeing it as weakness. And so, we have to understand that they are not the Soviet Union. They're not Russia. They don't have the same mannerisms and intent that the West does. So we have to begin to realize that, the way that you work with them is really to make them approach you, not have to approach them consistently. You have to put them a little bit back on their back foot. And, that's one of the things that President Trump did so well. He caught them off guard. He put them on their back foot. And that means that they have to come to us and begin to have a better relationship. We have to make them work for it because they think they need to. If we always go to them, then we're constantly they're basically going to ignore us, number one. And number two, they're going to think they're weak.
And in that vein, General, what would the correct response have been in this scenario then?
Well, in this scenario, what you do is you shoot down the balloon, immediately as it crosses U.S. territory, and then you bring the ambassador in and you issue a severe démarche, and then you leave it at that.
And General, I want to zoom in on this balloon specifically. So in the past, there was a congressional report speaking about in terms of North Korea, where if North Korea were to send an EMP attack, it would wipe out America's grid and kill 90% of Americans. And in terms of this recent Chinese spy balloon, some experts are raising similar concerns that if it had been higher up, it could also have carried such a device and have such an event. How would we defend against that kind of event?
Well, so it doesn't need to be higher up. A nuclear weapon at the altitude of the balloon will have a smaller geographic area, but it'll still take out, a significant portion of the United States. If it's in key areas, it could potentially lead to the entire grid collapsing. So one of the things and one of the reasons I left the military was to create infrastructure that can survive that. And, for the last 30 years, China has been building their infrastructure in anticipation of the potential for conflict. And so they have infrastructure that's survivable while we don't. Now, we don't have to have the entire country be survivable, but certainly in communities so that they can continue to, call first responders or get medical help or have financial transactions. We need to have the ability to continue to operate as a country. As we saw during Hurricane Katrina, civil society very rapidly, within just hours, begins to break down not just when you lose power, but when you lose the ability to communicate and reassure the population that help is on the way.
In general, with this Chinese spy balloon incident and other fragmented ones, say TikTok and Huawei in the past, and fentanyl maybe, what is the bigger picture that we're seeing here in terms of communist China?
Well, as I write in my book, War Without Rules, we are seeing the unfolding of unrestricted warfare, the use of all kinds of tools, whether it be TikTok or balloons or even the financial markets. China is basically undermining the faith and confidence of the American people in our ability to defend ourselves and continue in the form of the republic upon which it was founded. And so this is their ability to erode, not just in our own system, but in the international system more broadly, the belief that democracy is good. They want to say, no, democracy is bad. We need a system more like China's so that can protect us. And the more fear they can create, the more uncertainty they can create about our ability to thrive and survive, in a democratic republic, they win. That is what they're looking for, because that allows them to not only continue in power in China, but continue to form and shape the world in ways that support that continuation of power of the Chinese Communist Party.